Hi there, Mark from Teacharium here. This is a great video to watch if this is your first time using Teacharium. So when you first sign up, you'll be on the dashboard and you can create a new lesson. Give it a name and click the Create button, and from there you'll be in the lesson editor. The first thing you're looking at is the abstract for the lesson. This is a document that you can write that describes what you want to teach, maybe any learning goals. It's really a place for you to organize your thoughts. This abstract will be used by the AI later to help you build your lesson, and it can also be used by human authors to make sure that you hit all the points that you want to hit. And since the year is 2026, of course, there's an AI assistant on the left side of the screen that'll help you either write the abstract or create the structure of the lesson later. If I switch over to the list view of the lesson, I'll see my sections and steps. Steps are where you author your content. They each kind of represent one screen worth of content, and sections let you organize your steps. I can create a new step by clicking the Add Step button and giving it a name. But for now, we're just going to edit the default one that it gave us. When you first go into the step editor, you're presented with a blank canvas. Over on the right here, there's a list of components that I can add to my lesson. Let's start by dragging in a text component to my lesson. When I do that, there's a little bit of default placeholder content, but I can click this little edit button here. It'll open up an editor so that I can author whatever content I want. There are a lot of components, so we're not going to go through them all in this intro. But if you look through the documentation and our other guides, you'll get a good idea of them. Some components, like the multiple choice question, support subcomponents. So if I drag that out here, I can see that I have a multiple choice question, and then within it, I have these blue areas here with the options in it. By default, I'm getting a text block in each, which I can edit just like I did with my other text block. But I can also get rid of that text block and drag in any other component. Say I wanted to have images instead of text items in my question. I could do exactly that. On the right here, we've been looking at the Components tab, but if I switch over to the Options tab, I can see options for my currently selected component. For an image, I can click Browse and select an image. If I go to the Media Library, I can use the Unsplash Media Library to search for any images. Let's look for apples. There we go. I'm going to use that image. And there it is in my multiple choice question. I could alter the options for this, like the size. When you have a subcomponent like this, you can drag in multiple components. So like right now there's an image, and I could drag a text in with it, so that there's text and an image. And this is how you can compose components into more complex components. There's a layout component that lets me do things like having columns or rows. You can put layouts inside of layouts to create whatever kind of configuration you want for your actual display. As you're editing, there's a quick step preview to see what the step will actually look like to the user. I can go back to the edit mode by clicking the edit button. Underneath the list of available components, I have our current components within the lesson. If I click one of these, it'll select it. This is really handy for things like multiple choice where there's subcomponents. So here's my text and here's my image within it. One small trick is if I have one selected and I click on it again, nothing will be selected. And now if I go to my options, are showing me options for the entire step. You notice there's a next button option. I can either always show it or always hide it. There's also a background image I could set. When we play the lesson, it'll open up the lesson player. By default, it has a blank start screen. You can customize that in other areas. And here's my first step. I can select my options. And then if there was another step, I could have clicked the next button to go on to it. This is just the default player that Teacharium gives you. It's really meant to be embedded within your EdTech program or perhaps within your LMS. And then your application would take over all the frame around it to give a more seamless experience within your application. Back in the editor, I'm going to close the current step by clicking the little X. And I'm going to create a new step. I'm going to call that step Fractions and open it and edit it. Now, on this fraction steps, I'm going to pull out a text block. And what I want to do is I want to prompt the user to type in two numbers, and then I want to show that as a fraction on a fraction strip. So the text component actually has more than just text in it. So I'm going to go in here and say, type in a denominator, and then I'm going to add an input right here. And it's going to ask me, what kind of input do I want to make? Now, I haven't set up any variables ahead of time, so I'm going to go ahead and click here and create a new variable. And I'm going to call this denominator. I'm going to call it a number, and it's going to start off at, say, 1. I add that variable. What this is going to do is I'll have a numeric input, and when the learner types in a number, it's going to save it to that denominator variable. I can give it a label and a placeholder if I want, but I'm just going to skip those for now and click done. So now I can see in my text header, I have type in a denominator, and I have my numeric input, which saves to denominator. I'm going to do another one for the numerator. And I think that was a heading 2. There we go. And I'll add another input. I'll create a new variable, call it numerator. It's a number, and I'll start this one off at 0. And save those changes. And now I can see that my text has 2 inputs, one for a denominator, one for a numerator. Now I want to actually use those numbers somewhere. So I'm going to come over here to my components and scroll down. And there's actually a fraction bar component. So I'll drag that in. And here's my fraction bar. I can go over to options, and I can see that it has a segment and it has a filled. For my segments, I'm going to delete that, use this little picker, and select my denominator. And then for my filled, I'm also going to delete that, use this button, and click the numerator. So now what should happen is when the user's looking at this, and they type in a denominator, this fraction bar will be segmented into that many pieces. And when they type in a numerator, that many should be filled in. If I do my quick step preview, I can give that a try. Type in a numerator. Right now it's 1, so I just have 1. If I type in 5, now I have 5. If I type in a numerator, and I can now see that I have 3/5. And this is how you can link different components within the lesson using variables. Also, over here on the left side, there's a variables option, and I can see all the variables that I've created. Back in edit mode, I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this text block. And I'm going to add a different kind of component. This is a slider component, which gives kind of a graphical view of a numeric input. Some components make variables all by themselves. So the slider widget, if I expand it here, it has a slider value that it made for me. I didn't have to create that variable. So if I come back to the fraction bar and I go to options, I can delete what's in here for the denominator, and I can change this to my slider widget's slider value. And then for filled, since I get rid of my text block, I'm just going to say it's always 1. Now if I preview this, I'll get a slider, and as I move the slider up and down, my fraction bar changes. It probably would have been a good idea to put a max value on this slider of like 10 or something, but you can see how it works. Now if I go back into edit mode, you may have noticed this little star button up here. And if I click that, we're going to go into an AI generation mode for a step. This is really useful for scaffolding the initial step and then going through and editing it just the way you want. So the first step in this is that you describe what you want it to do. And I'm going to go ahead and tell it to create another slider to control a number of filled segments in my fraction bar. And I'll click the generate button. And it's going to go through and it's going to think about it and make some changes. And then I can click saved and closed. Now if I do a quick step preview and I turn up the number of segments, I can use this slider to change the number of filled ones. And that's how you can use the AI to help you build the lessons. Likewise, when I'm in the list view, I can use this chat to help me structure the lesson. I just told it to create 2 new sections with 2 steps each, and it's going to go through. Whenever the AI wants to make a change to your lesson, it's going to ask for confirmation. So here it's asking me, do I want to create a section, name section 2 with these steps in it, and section 3 with these steps in it. And I could click the yes and the yes, or I can confirm them all at the same time. So I'll just do the confirm all and let it create them all. And you can see that it went through and it created those steps for me. You can use the AI here as a time-saving mechanism. But more importantly, it understands the abstract that you wrote, so you could tell it to scaffold out your entire lesson for you. If you look at the learning inventory guide that we have, we actually go through that whole process. If I go back to the dashboard, there's a few other main areas of Teacharium. The media library is where all of our images are stored. Here we can see that bunch of red apples that I pulled in from Unsplash. You can also click the create image and use AI to generate images for you right through this interface. There's also a widget library. This allows you to create your own custom widgets that can appear within your lesson. I can click the create widget button, give it a name and type, and then I can go into a vibe coding environment to actually create that widget. In this environment, I can tell the AI what kind of widget I want to create, and it'll go ahead and write the code for me. Here's a super simple widget that's just going to display a big red circle. I can publish that widget. After publishing, I could use my widget within my lesson. and create widgets for all kinds of things, new item types, interactive components, maybe simulations that show results of user choices. Finally, under Workplace Settings, we have some settings for your organization. You can give it a name. Under Team Members, you can invite other people that should have access to your organization. Under AI usage, you can see how many of your AI credits you've currently used. Finally, under API tokens, developers can create API tokens to embed the lesson within other applications. If you ever get stuck, there's often a Get Help option in the upper right-hand corner. You type in your request, it'll be sent to our ticketing system with some context about what you were recently doing. I hope this quick tour gives you enough information to start trying out Teacharium. We have other guides that go into much more depth about specific areas of the application. Thanks a lot for watching.